All right, we're in AP Stat. We are in Chapter 2, and I have some data practice problems for you that are from the book. So we can kind of take a gander and make sure that we are getting some help here. So as we go through these practice problems, I recommend that you pause the video, you try your best to scan and write them down to see what you think you can get for the answers as well. But the more problems that you see, the easier it's going to be to get these answers. But the point is, with this one, in 2017 in February, they had a poll, and the question was asked, in politics, as of today, do you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent? And the possible responses obviously were Democrat, Republican, independent, but you could also say other, or you could just say no response. Now, what kind of variables are those is basically what we're getting at. And it's simple. Those are all categories, right? They're all categorical variables. We're trying to distinguish between which one is which. Those are different categories that you could be. You can't add those ideas up, so they're not quantities. Medicine example. So you got pharmaceutical companies, right? Conduct an experiment in which a subject takes 100 milligrams of a substance orally. The researchers measure how many minutes it takes for half of the substance to exist in the bloodstream. What kind of variable is this? If we're measuring how many minutes, can you add up minutes? All right, the company is studying a quantitative variable because the medicine that we're talking about, you can have a certain quantity of medicine. They are measuring how many minutes it takes for that substance to exit the blood. So we can calculate a quantity of how many minutes, right? For these next ones, it says, for each description of data, identify the who and the what were investigated and the population of interest. So, again, lots of words. You're going to get tons of words in stat. That means you're going to have to pause the video and write this stuff down, or at least a summary. All right, coffee stations in offices often just ask users to leave money in a tray to pay, right? That's all they want to do. But many people cheat it, right? They don't really put money in, they just take it. Researchers at the Newcastle University alternatively taped 2 posters over the coffee station. During 1 week, all right, it was a picture of flowers, and during the other week, it was a pair of staring eyes, all right? They found that the average contribution was significantly higher when the eyes poster was up than when the flowers were. Apparently, the mere feeling of being watched, even by eyes that weren't real, was enough to encourage people to behave more honestly. Okay? So, the who. Who was it? Well, who were the workers who were buying coffee? That's the who, right? They were the ones buying coffee. The what was the amount of money contributed, right? And the population that we were looking at, they were all the people, and the interest that they were at is the honor system, basically. So it's just trying to read a problem, and can you see who is basically it's about, and what is it about, and then the population were the people, and whether the honor system was taking place. Same idea with this one. I identify the who and the what and the population of interest. Some motion pictures are profitable and others are not. Understandable. The movie industry would like to know what makes a movie successful. Data from 120 first-run movies released in 2005 suggested that longer movies actually make less profit. All right, so from the data they got, longer movies make less profit. So taking a look at this, it says the who. Well, who, what were we looking at? What was the data coming from? Who were those data? It was the 120 first-run movies in 2005. What were they looking at? They were looking at the length and the profit, right? How long were the movies versus the profit? The population of interest. The whole population where we were looking at, that population, that was first-run movies. They weren't looking at second-run movies straight to DVDs. They were just looking at the population as first-run movies. Okay? This one. All right. Are physically fit people less likely to die of cancer? All right. An article in May of 2002 issue of Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise reported results of a study that followed 25,892 men aged 30 to 87 for 10 years. So they followed them. The most physically fit men had a 55% lower risk of death from cancer than the least fit ones. So basically, we found out if you're more fit in that age, you had a lower risk of death of cancer. So who were we looking at? Well, we were looking at men, right? We were looking at specifically 2,589 men, and they were aged between 30 to 87. And what were we looking at? They were basically looking at their fitness level, and they were reversing that against the cause of death. All right. Population of interest, though, we were population. That whole thing they were looking at, they were basically looking at men. They were looking at men and women. We were looking at men. All right. But men basically ages 30 to 87 as a population. All right, for each description of data, identify the W's, the name, the variables, specify for each variable whether its use indicates that it should be treated as a category or quantitative, and for any quantitative variable, identify the units in which it was measured. So, the Arby's menu, a listing posted by the Arby's restaurant chain gives for each of the sandwiches it sells, the type of meat in the sandwich, the number of calories, and the serving size in ounces. So basically they have that all listed there. The data might be used to assess the nutritional value of different sandwiches, which is true. So you can look at all the stuff that's in the sandwich. Now, who? Well, it was Arby's sandwiches. They were looking at all of Arby's sandwiches. What type of meat? All right. The number of calories, the serving size. It says right here, what were they looking at? The restaurant chains for each of the sandwiches. It sells the type of meat, right? It says right there, the number of calories and the serving size. When? Yeah, it didn't really say when this is being done, like we don't know when, but where that was happening at Arby's restaurants and why. It seems like these might be used to help with the nutritional values is why we were doing it. Okay. The variables, all right. The variables seem to be the what. So they are the calories, the serving size, right, and the type of meat. Well, the type of meat, you can't really add that up. That's why that's categorical, but calories you can add and do stuff to. Serving sizes you can also do, so that's why those are quantitative. Taking a look at this one, medical researchers at a large city hospital investigating the impact of prenatal care on newborn health collected data from 882 births during 98 to 2000. They kept track of the mother's age, the number of weeks the pregnancy lasted, the type of birth, right, whether it was cesarean, induced, natural, the level of paternal care the mother had, whether that was minimal or adequate, the birth weight and sex of the baby, and whether the baby exhibited health problems. Okay, geez. So they went over a ton of stuff. So as you're looking at this, the who was simple. They were looking at 882 people born between 98 and 2000. But what they were looking at, they were keeping track of the mother's age. They were keeping track of the number of weeks of the pregnancy. They were keeping track of the births, but not just types of birth, the different types, basically the entire way down. Where? It just said that it was happening at a city hospital is all that it really said. So we couldn't get too more specific, but why? We want to see whether, medical research at a large city is the where, hospital, investigate the impact of prenatal care. So the why, research investigating the impact of prenatal care. That's why. I said so in the problem. And how? It appears that they kept track of all births with probably records at the hospital. So the key with all of this is not just distinguishing it with the problems, but also making sure you can distinguish the variables. Like, for example, the quantitative variables, all right, mother's age. So when you're looking through this, mother's age, the number of weeks the pregnancy lasted, right? But the type of birth would not be that. The type of birth would end up being categorical, right? The level of prenatal care, that could also be that, because you can't really add up those three things. The birth weight, I can certainly add up, but the sex of the baby or the gender, that would then be categorical again. The birth weight would be quantitative. Whether the baby exhibited health problems, yes or no, basically. Those are categories that we're talking about. Horse races. The Kentucky Derby is a horse race that has been run every year since 1875 at the Churchill Downs in Louisville. The race started at a 1.5 mile race, but in 1896 it was shortened to 1.25 miles because experts felt that 3-year-old horses shouldn't run such a long race that early in the season. It has been run in May every year but one in 1901 when it took place on April 29th. Here are the data from the first 4 of those races. So here's all the data that we have from those races. Okay, so I have the dates, I have the winners, I have the margin lengths, how much they won by, who was the jockey, the winner, how much they made when they paid out, the duration of their win, and the track condition, how was it. Okay, so they got that all there. Point is, after you're looking at all of that, and if you have to pause the video, just scan it or go back and forth to figure it out. The point is, the who, well, it was the Kentucky Derby. The what, we were looking at, and it's all of these up at the top. We're looking at the date, the winner, the margin of length, the jockey, the whole way down the line. But when, they told us it only went from 1875 to 2008. All right, the where, again, was at the Churchill Downs. But why? They're trying to examine the trends, right? This is normally why people do data in general, to see if they're noticing any kind of patterns. And the way they're probably doing this is basically just by looking up the statistics. Official statistics are kept for each race anyway, but the variables is the key that I want to make sure you get from this problem. All these variables, what is what? So, for example, the winner and who the jockey is, and the track conditions, those are all different types of categories. There's nothing I can do, but a date, a margin, how much they won by, how much is paid out, those are all quantitative variables. Okay, you can add time, date, time, that is quantitative. Okay, so we managed through that. If you have any other questions, those are just some practice problems for this section.